Okay, I think we're good. All right. Thank you everyone for checking out this video. My name is Melanie VanHouten and I'm the founding director of Josephine Sculpture Park. And I'm here with Peyton Scott Russell, who is a graffiti artist from Minneapolis and has been a friend of mine for, we can't remember how long, but that must be a good thing, I think. We were reminiscing a while ago about the first time well, not the first time we met, but maybe the time that sort of initiated all of this work that we've been doing together over the last 3 or 4 years was right before, well, must have been a year before the eclipse.
It was. Yeah, meeting at Franconia Sculpture Park in Minnesota. That seems to be a place that has made a lot of relationships. And yeah, we were meeting over the 20th anniversary of Franconia, and the eclipse was approaching, and I was really interested in checking out the eclipse, and I knew it was in Kentucky, and so I was planning on doing a family drive with my kids and making it our summer getaway road trip. And you were like, well, I live in Kentucky. You should come, stop by when you're through. So I was like, you know what? Absolutely, I'm going to do that. And then you said, by the way, maybe you should apply for a position at the park, or as an artist at the park to build something on the land. So that's kind of how it started. And that's how we really started talking and developing where we are today.
Yeah, I was certainly familiar with your work. You'd done pieces at Franconia. Gosh, do you know, when was the first time you did something else? Was it at the old park?
It was at the very first park.
Yeah.
I was visiting there in 95, 96, like the year that it opened.
Beginning, yeah.
Yeah, I was actually on it. I would go to Taylor's Falls, which was the river on St. Croix just down the way.
Yeah.
And we would do a lot of cliff jumping and picnicking. And I remember passing the park several times, because we would go several times in the summer. And I remember seeing these shapes and things, off the road. And being an artist, I was like, wait a minute, I got to go check that out. So I'd pull in there, and I met John and Rollin like right away.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, we just started this thing, and, come check it out. And I said, well, I'd love to do art. And so it was kind of on the fly, and I just happened to meet them. And they, so every time I went to go swimming and picnicking, I would stop at the park. So they encouraged me to get a little bit more involved. I had a friend of mine that actually applied and got a grant and did a kind of a smaller sculpture. And I went there to go help him.
Mm-hmm.
And then they were like, you should apply as well. So this had been a couple years now. And then when I finally applied, I got my first Jerome Fellowship in 2001, I think it was.
Okay.
Yeah, 4 or 5 years later after me being there in 2001, I built that obelisk, that's 26-story steel obelisk. I've never welded before. I never cut steel. It scared me to death. I'm a two-dimensional artist, and John Hawk, the director, when I got the fellowship, I wanted to build my idea out of plywood, because I could screw screws and work with wood. He was like, no, we're gonna build it in steel, and we're gonna show you how to weld, and you're gonna cut the steel, and we're gonna show you how to do it. And that just scared the crap out of me. But with all the interns and everybody that was there, in short order, I was welding. I was learning how to clamp steel and move it around. I'd never dealt with weight before.
Yeah.
And moving heavy objects around and dealing with people and crews and collaboration. You can't do that stuff by yourself. So that was a whole new experience for me. And so that kind of really thrusted me into the world of sculpture, like real sculpture, not like studio found object, cut cardboard sculpture that I'd like to do. This was real deal. And that kind of started it off. And ever since then, I looked for opportunities to build larger sculpture, but also to build sculpture that would provide a canvas for my two-dimensional work. So I would combine the two together all the time.
Yeah. I remember that obelisk piece, and I guess I moved to Minnesota in '99 and visited the park pretty that spring. I guess I moved up there in the fall, and so it would have been the spring of 2000. I first visited, and the thing I loved, I mean, Franconia is what inspired me to build Josephine Sculpture Park, and John was a huge part of that too, and that whole idea of collaboration and connecting people. And I saw people from all different kinds of backgrounds, you know, from the farmer that lived down the road to, you know, some artist from New York building something on the pad. All of a sudden they're standing there, you know, problem solving, trying to figure out how to rig this sculpture, you know. And I saw that and I thought, that is what I want my work to do, you know. And I was making sculpture at the time. I was a sculptor, and I was at the university in grad school at the time. But I remember having that same kind of feeling. John really he just connected with people and inspired people to do really big things. And you know, so I don't know, that's what brought us together, and also, you know, what inspired me to build the park. So it's, you know, and then for us to come together so many years later, for you to be here at Josephine building GRAPHOLOGYHENGE was just, I don't know, it was special for me for all kinds of reasons, but all of that history, you know, was part of it for sure.
Yeah, I'd like to piggyback a little bit more on that. I think, you know, with including John and Franconia and him, you know, really inspiring and motivating you to do things you didn't think were really possible. At least, you know, that was my experience, and just really pushing you and to be ambitious and making you a little afraid, a little nervous, a little anxious, and then having the help to do that. You know, it's what made me, when I came to Josephine Sculpture Park, I could see the influence from Franconia right there. It was like just a little piece of Franconia, a lot quieter, a lot tamer, but you could see that it was pretty much the same thing. And I really appreciated that, because Franconia was just, it's a really special place in my career, and it really helped me become the artist I am today.
Yeah, me too. I mean, and you know, I mean, it was John, and it was the place, and it was the way it connected people, all of those things for me too. So it's cool that we share that experience. But you want to talk a little bit about GRAPHOLOGYHENGE, and we can show the video and really kind of dig into that.
So another pivotal moment in my career. It's a monster piece. It's my largest work of art to date. Again, another incredibly ambitious project. And, you know, while I was building it, there was some hard moments. You know, I'm not going to say doubtful moments. I like challenges. I like to push through. But, you know, I'm going to go back here a little bit. As a graffiti writer of like 30 plus years, you know, I was the first wave of hip hop in the Twin Cities here in Minnesota in the mid 80s. And I started off as a b-boy, a break dancer, but quickly discovered graffiti. And being a young artist, that was the thing that kind of took precedence over all of the other elements. And I was quickly out, like, trying to be a graffiti writer in town. The biggest thing, I couldn't articulate this back then, was the artistic nature of it. I knew how I felt on a visceral level when I was drawing and practicing my name and going out into the public realm and painting my name. I knew there was something a lot more than the quote unquote vandalism aspect of it. I knew that I was connecting with community. I knew that I had a voice, and I was saying something transcending the name that I was writing. I was making art, and I was connecting with environment, and I was infusing myself in the infrastructure of the fabric of like society and urban landscape, and leaving my mark. And I wanted to express that more openly, more publicly, and I wanted people to understand that I don't consider myself like an outlaw or a criminal, that I'm out vandalizing and destroying property and trespassing and all those negative connotations that come with the word graffiti. And it's really a positive application of a voice and a message. And so for all of these years, even as, again, as a young artist, I knew that there was that piece of it. And I've been trying to articulate this my entire life. And now being an educator, a teaching artist, this is how I teach graffiti. I teach graffiti from the positive aspect of it, from the artistic aspect of it, the merits, the voice, the freedom of expression, and color, and how your name fits in a larger climax. You know, you work on yourself as an individual, but how do you as an individual contribute to the larger picture? And that's what graffiti artists and graffiti writers really kind of embody. It's also an American art form. It's a purely American art form because of all of those reasons: freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and going out and exploring yourself as an individual, and how does yourself as an individual fit in that larger climate. Climate. So GRAPHOLOGYHENGE was an opportunity for me to make this a little bit more public, for me to make a piece that was interactive, that could invite the community into making and contributing a verse, for better or for worse. You know, I say this because I want to open this up even to people that may be, you know, going against the larger society, you know, having different viewpoints that are not positive, that are very negative. But that's part of graffiti too. That is a part of it. That's part of people's voices. And so GRAPHOLOGYHENGE is a sanctuary for graffiti writing of all kinds. And of course, if someone goes down there and writes something, you know, has something of profanity, and maybe there's lewd pictures, you know, we'll probably go over it right away. But it's not condoned. Let them speak their mind, and then it'll probably get painted over right away. But it's still, it's a place for people to express an opinion. And, you know, I don't want to be hypocritical and say that this people can say what they want to say and these people can't. It's a place for everybody. And so, again, visiting out and looking at the land, how was I going to do this? How was I going to pull this idea off? And you so graciously gave me a piece of land that was quite large, very intimidating, I must say. In the beginning, I was like, you know, what am I going to do with this? I have no idea how to actually, you know, develop land and really build something larger than I've ever done before. So, you know, the idea came to me to build walls. Let's build walls. I'm going to build graffiti walls that I can paint on. I'm going to build my own canvases, and I'm going to invite people down to come paint themselves. And so that's what GRAPHOLOGYHENGE is all about. And I can go into the meaning of it later, but I think maybe we should watch the video and explain from that point.
Yeah, that sounds good. Are you going to share that one? Or do you want me to do that one? I can do it.
Yeah, I'll let you do it.
Okay, I say I can do it. I'm going to attempt to do it. All right.
I'm going to start buttons, and I'm going to erase something and delete
Okay,
things.
all right. Don't push anything. Okay, I'm going to attempt to show the video. I'm going to share it. Let's see. Oh, let's see. Which one do I want to go to?
Yeah, so as you're doing this, I'll also warm up some other things, you know, pre-visiting the park and figuring out like what I needed to do. Your father is a construction, I don't know, what do you call him? Guru. He builds homes.
Yeah, he's a developer, yeah, and a builder.
He has his own crew. So I knew I wanted to build these walls out of brick, cinder blocks. And so you guys introduced me to one of his bricklayers, and I kind of had my first introduction to laying brick. I've never done that before. And there, you know, kind of is a finished wall. I do have to say that I have so much more respect for that kind of work, that kind of labor. That skilled labor was incredible. I had no clue how challenging and difficult that was, especially with the heat, dealing with the elements, and then you know, mixing the mortar and lifting the block and laying it, making sure it's straight and level. There was so much that went into it. And the Cunningham masonry crew, I have so much admiration and respect for you guys that showed me how to do, you know, how to do it. Obviously the Cunningham crew, they built pretty much, you know, 80% of they did most of the work. And I kind of flanked them and kind of learned as I went on. They saved one wall for me completely, where I was able to build my own wall from ground level up. So that was really nice. But when, you know, when you look at the levels and how it's balanced, it doesn't look anything like their walls. Their walls are so clean and sharp and precise. And my wall is a little wonky. Even though I had the levels and, you know, it just, you know, it's like anything. It's like anything that you've done for a couple of decades, you just become a master at it. And I just got a lot of respect for that kind of work. And now I'm actually looking to do more. I want to duplicate this project in other areas. Not build the exact structure, but I want to build a little different kind of formats, formations of the walls. And so yeah, so that video was pretty much like showing some of the early parts of it, you know, the laying the brick, and then a little bit of the painting. And I don't know, you want to show some of the snippets of the kids working, actually using it?
Yeah, so so we built this in 2018, and then it was sort of open to the public. Anybody could come paint on it. But then in 2019, you came back and did a camp. We did a graffiti camp, Sprayfinger camp here, and I have a couple short pieces, and we did a paint jam too. So I've got a couple shorter. Let's see, this one. Woo. This one shows kind of all the different walls that each of the kids was working on. So I think this was maybe the final day. You think?
Okay, yeah, it's hard for me to remember, but this does look like the final day of the camp. Yeah, we spent like a week practicing can control, practicing on smaller different papers, and then we would go to the wall and then, you know, practice on the wall. And then the final day was having them create a final piece, putting all the practicing together and all the drawing and the sketching. And then, you know, just having a place, a safe place to practice this art form. And I got to tell you, man, for the last 30 years, anybody that's ever gotten close to this medium has always fallen in love with it. It's something about using spray paint and the propellant of the paint and the immediacy and the color. It's just intoxicating. It just really abducts you, and you just want to do more. You want to write your name. You know, you want to see what your friends are doing. You want to see how they did it, and then, you know, like comparing, and you can just see like the smiles and the energy.
Yeah.
So I'd actually like to talk about the sculpture in the background here. If you go back to that picture again,
Yeah.
if there's the totem, the letter totem, yeah, right there in the background of the crowd.
Here.
So I actually do this in a lot of my sculptures. Once upon a time, I worked part-time at a sign company, building these signs, forming these letters, and then putting lights in them, and then installing them for businesses. And so, again, as a graffiti writer, you know, I look at letters a little differently. I look at them as artistic objects. And so when I actually had a chance to build and form these letters, the shapes of them just intrigued me on a different level. For one, having them be a three-dimensional object, something tangible that I could actually hold and bend and twist, was different than actually writing or painting them. So I've since, for the last 10 years, I have some sort of relief element, such as this totem in my pieces. So obviously this symbolizes the essence and the core of graffiti art. It's about the alphabet and using these letters to spell out a name or a message, and then you articulate those letters artistically into sometimes an abstract form where it's illegible, or you can keep it very legible, adding color, theme, backgrounds, but just using letters as a source of art. So I really like to show the ABCs and the XYZs in my work, and I think what's fascinating, and Mel, I'd love you to chime in on this part. Even though there's no signs up, I don't want anybody to touch the letters. I want that to be more of a sacred kind of off limits to the writing, because the letters themselves are already, they're established. They don't need anything. And then the walls themselves are where the painting needs to happen. And part of my idea was to have this painted on a regular basis, pretty much a daily basis, again, from the novice to the experienced graffiti writer. And Mel, if you could speak to that, the things that you've noticed over the years and how the space has been used.
Yeah, I mean, you know, within the last year, and even since January, you know, we closed April 2nd due to COVID, and we're just now starting to reopen by appointment. So we've been closed for a while, but up until that point, this year especially, we had noticed so many more. I mean, every time I was out there, there was new painting that had happened, and I never saw it happen. It was just happening. And the drone video that I just showed there, that was taken actually after we closed. So at some point in April, we were doing a lot of different drone stuff out here since we were closed, and you could see almost all of those paintings had happened in 2020. So, which I think was just amazing. It was really exciting for me to see, because I knew that that was really one of the things you were wanting to happen, was for this piece to really kind of take on a life of its own. And it has done that. And it's so much fun for me to see that evolution. And so one of the things you and I talked about this spring was that we are going to start taking photographs of the piece very routinely, like, you know, weekly or monthly, so that you can see the evolution of it over time, because it really is, it has taken on a life of its own, and it's really cool to see. And you can tell there are people who have more experience. There are people who are, you know, sort of medium experience, you know, they're a hell of a lot better than anything I could do. But they're coming out to practice, you know, and you can see them in the parking lot. The guys they'll meet, they've got their sketchbooks, and they're kind of working back and forth, and then they grab up all their paint, you know, in their crates, and they head out to the sculpture to paint. And then, you know, it's like I'll go out the next day and see what they did, and it's really amazing to see. So I think the community has really embraced it, and there's nothing like this, certainly in the state of Kentucky, and I don't know that there's anything like it anywhere really, where it's a safe space for everybody, really, you know, whether you're, you know, just writing with a Sharpie, you know, writing a little note on the wall, or you're bringing out, you know, all your special paint, or you're going to paint a mural, you know, with brushes. I mean, it's really, you know, anything could happen out there. So it's been really a lot of fun to see it evolve that way.
Yeah. I'd like to talk a little bit more about the name, Graphologyhenge. You know, as I was contemplating the idea of what this could be, you know, I was doing a lot of research. You know, I've been studying graffiti and digging into the depths of the history of it, and you know, I've met most of my heroes over the last 2 decades. With trips to New York, and you know, different trips out of the country, and just different states, and so just hearing different stories and different people's beginnings and origins. So I needed a name for this that was really fitting. And when I finally figured out that I was going to do the circle, and I needed to figure out how I was going to place the walls, like what was the reasoning that the walls were going to be in a particular area or a particular position. So I decided to go northeast, southwest, and then the northwest, southeast, northwest, and so I'm kind of getting confused the other ones, but I placed them directionally. And as they were getting built, before I even came up with a name, people would come in and start calling it Stonehenge. Oh, you're building Stonehenge, and it would kind of frustrate me. It kind of irked me a little bit. It's like, it's not Stonehenge. It's not about that. But then I looked up Stonehenge and I started reading like what that meant. And the word henge is sort of a neologic or a neolithical placement of stones. It's a sacred space. It could be something about the equinox or something that aligns with the stars. But it's something that has to do with some sort of ethereal stars, spiritual kind of place where things can happen, a little mysterious. So I thought, God, that word henge, I really like that, but it's not Stonehenge. So then at the time with my classes, I have a curriculum where I called alphabetical graphology. And that is the study of handwriting and the study of lettering as it pertains to your personality. So I said, God, that is perfect. Graphology, the study of letters and handwriting as it pertains to your personality, and henge, a safe place, a sacred place for this art form. So the name GRAPHOLOGYHENGE was born. That's where the name comes from. And yeah, I think there was a lot of other things at play as far as like spiritual alignment and that kind of thing. And it just worked out so great. Again, going back to the walls were built, even your dad's crew, they came out, they were only supposed to help me in like just a few days, like it was 2, maybe 3 days. And then they ended up staying the entire week. I mean, it became pretty obvious that if they left, it probably wouldn't have gotten done. I would have to come back, which I came back, the next year to finish up. There were some things that needed to be finished, but they went in right away and finished it out. I'd actually like to go back a little bit on that video. There's a particular person I want to talk about who had there's actually quite a few heads in here that I want to mention. So I want to get into T-Kid. T-Kid is one of my heroes. He's one of the pioneers of the culture, and that's him right there. Could you put it on pause? He's doing a little funky dance. I mean, what can I say about T-Kid? He's just legendary. Bronx, New York. 70s subway graffiti writer. Really helped identify what's known as the bar style, a New York style. Wild style lettering. You can see that's his wall in the background. Of course, that's he and I posing in front of his wall. But I'd been in conversation with him a couple years ago, and I was actually trying to get him to come to Minnesota for a guest artist here. And it was just more fitting to bring him to Kentucky to paint on GRAPHOLOGYHENGE. I talked to him. We worked out a deal, and there he is. I actually got to meet him. It's one of those bucket list check boxes for me. He couldn't have been more of a super cool guy. I mean, he's definitely a character from very adverse conditions. He grew up surviving, in the worst of it. And graffiti was one of these things that literally saved his life. Gave him a career. Now he's an icon in this culture. He travels the world. His artwork is very heavily priced, and he's very sought out throughout the world. And I finally got a chance to meet him. It's pretty remarkable.
Yeah,
I'm really blessed that I had this opportunity.
Well, we're grateful you brought him here, and he did an artist talk at the Grand Theater, which was really cool. And I know you said, if you came back to visit and all these walls weren't totally painted over, you'd be really disappointed. But I did hate to see this one get painted over.
Yeah, that's part of the ephemeral nature of graffiti.
Yeah.
It's here today, gone tomorrow kind of thing. And yeah, I mean, obviously, T-Kid as a legend, I would love to have him paint this on a canvas and then roll it up and save it. But that's not the intent of this particular place.
Right.
You know, the energy of what he had done before is there. It's one of the layers of paint. And yeah, it got painted over right away, probably from people that had no idea what they were painting on top of.
Sure.
But again, that's also a part of it too. But you know, we have photographs, we've got internet now, and that it'll live forever as long as that is there. Um, you know, on a personal thing, I know that this meant a lot more to me than it did the students. They had no idea really who this person is. So I was just really starstruck the entire week, and just really giddy that, you know, I'm spending a week of an intimate week in a rural setting with T-Kid, having dinner every night and sharing stories and hearing intimate conversations about, you know, experiences and things that I've only seen in videos and books. And now I'm hearing it firsthand, you know, over dinner and a beer. It was just incredible. I mean, I don't know what else to say about it.
Yeah.
It was phenomenal.
It was great. The whole experience, I mean, from building the piece with you and to having him here and all the guys, you know, that came from Louisville, and I think we had somebody from Cincinnati, and maybe even somebody from Tennessee, if I'm not mistaken. But at the paint jam, that's some of those videos I showed were from the paint jam. And,
Yeah,
it was
big
just
shout
great.
out. Yeah, big shout out to Mines and FST crew out of Louisville. They actually really were instrumental in Rock the Henge. Rock the Henge was a graffiti jam where all these pictures are coming from, that actually kind of like celebrated the completion of Graphology Henge. So we had our own little mini jam, had some food trucks, had a DJ, and then Mines and FST crew, Gambit right there in the corner. He's just so incredible. Uh, Zester, oh my God, a New York legend, just a hardcore bomber. He was doing a tribute to Tupac, you know, and then we actually tragically lost him not too long ago. We lost both of them. Very influential graffiti writers in our culture. So I had a chance to meet both of them, Zor and Tupac. Both of these guys, I had a chance to paint with them, and now they're both gone, which is really awful. But so yeah, so there's people like that. There's, you know, people like members of FST crew, T-Kid, you know, students, people coming down just saying, you know, Susie was here, Dan was here, just writing these novice messages, all the way up to legendary legends. The piece is working exactly the way I intended it to work.
Yeah,
It's wonderful.
it really is. Well, hey, so you want to shift gears a little bit and talk about what you've been working on in Minneapolis and, you know,
Oh yeah.
recent stuff? I might be able to pull that up on Facebook if you want me to try to pull up an image.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, let me give it a shot here.
Yeah, obviously Minneapolis, man. We've been, you know, I mean, we've pulled the rest of the country into a revolution. You know, hopefully real change will come out of recent events. Uh, you know, again, police brutality front and center stage, all eyes on Minneapolis. We really sparked a national revolution. Um, but yeah, the flashpoint was happened right here in my neighborhood. The corner where Mr. Floyd was murdered was the corner I grew up on. Um, it's the place that I spent my wonder years, from about toddler until 12 years old. Cub Foods, it's a grocery store slash drugstore, sort of kind of a general store, if you will, right on the corner. That's where I spent my youth. And video games in the 1980s, every 6 months, they would rotate the video games out of there. Video games like Asteroids, Space Invaders, Dig Dug, Moon Patrol, if you guys remember those kind of video games. That's what, that's where we went there. We'd get our candy. Across the street was a 7-Eleven. We'd get our Slurpees. And then we would go to the park that was just a block away, Phelps Park. That was the park that I grew up in. So that was my neighborhood. That was where I spent my childhood. And, this took place, the murder of Floyd George, right on that corner. So, my little kickboxing years right there. So when this happened, obviously I was in my studio and I on Facebook, I saw it going on, it was fresh. And, watching the video, at the moment, right at the time it happened, because it happened on 38th in Chicago, my childhood corner, it hit me really deep, more than the other ones. I was angry at all the other ones, but this one, man, I mean, on the spot, I was ready to go out and violently protest. It hit me like really badly. And I kind of thought I was alone in that, until I found out really quickly that almost everybody felt that way.
Yeah.
Why did this one do that? I'm not entirely sure. I think it had a lot to do with the video, and the way that his life was taken so slowly.
Yeah.
And so
I think that's what struck me about it, I think, was the slowness of it, and that he literally killed him with his bare hands, basically. I mean, it wasn't like in the heat of the moment somebody shot a gun, and it was those we've seen over and over and over. And this, to me, I think it was that slowness of it, that there was just a brutality to it that
how he just like stared at him. He just knew like that would happen.
Yeah.
It didn't move. I mean, just didn't let up at all. It just like suffocated him. So that just I got sick to my stomach.
Yeah.
I mean, another really profound moment, I just kept seeing my dad's face. My father is an incredibly dark-skinned black man, and I just kind of imagined that was my dad under there, and what I would have done had I been there. I could tell you right now, I probably wouldn't be here either, had I been on that scene. I would have intervened, and been shot, tased, killed myself, had I intervened with those 4 officers. But that was just, I mean, you don't really know what you would do in the moment. Maybe I would have recorded it myself. I don't know. Maybe I would have jumped in. You don't really know. But I just know, like, watching it, I just was so angry in that moment. Like, I was like, stop it, jump in, just jump in and stop it.
Right.
So, fast forward, I've got 2 kids, and I didn't want to go out and risk their safety and their health by, going out there and, kicking up dust myself and, being a part of the uprising. So my strongest tool, my most powerful tool, was me being a graffiti writer, being a graffiti artist, and doing something in the public for the people, and in an aggressive way, being able to contribute that way. So that's what I wanted to do. And I mean, again, you talk about the stars aligning and, kind of God leading the way. Andrew McGuffey gave me a call, another longtime friend of ours from Franconia Sculpture Park. Here he is. That's him. He called me as I was trying to figure out what to do. Like, what could I do? How can I contribute? He calls me and he says, "Hey, man, let's do something." And a couple years ago, he had an idea of building sort of like a billboard, like a canvas, and then having me paint on it. And then we go anonymously install it in some lot somewhere in the city. He's always wanted to do that.
He's rogue.
So, yeah, he's like that.
He's very rogue. I've done some rogue projects with him myself out on the lake, the ice shanties. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So he wanted to do that. And I was like, hey, well, this couldn't have been a better timing for that. He was like, okay, tell me what you need. Let's make it happen. And in the matter of 3 days, we were installing that piece on site.
Yeah.
From conversation to 3 days later, the piece behind us right there went on location. And every step of the way, every process of that, from the building of it, it's a 12 by 12, 12 feet by 12 feet square. We had a little bit of challenges putting that together. It's incredibly heavy, but it worked out great. And then finding a location. I originally wanted to make 3 of them, and I was going to put one in South Minneapolis, one in North Minneapolis, and one somewhere downtown. Again, all anonymously, kind of drop them in the middle of the night, and all of a sudden nobody knows. They just popped up. So as I was looking for locations, driving around, I stopped at 38th in Chicago, and I was like, wow, this has to go here. It has to go somewhere here. There was a lot of other murals there. There was a lot of other art, and I needed to be in a place where it kind of needed its own life. And so the other thing I realized right away was there was no way that I was going to do this anonymously. I couldn't drive into that sacred circle, drop it in the middle of the night, not have anyone see me. So I had to get some degree of permission. So I walked around. I had the picture on my phone. I found out the people that were kind of running the circle, the locals, and found out the head people that were there, showed them the picture. And of course, they immediately was, what do you need? What do you need? What do you need for help? We need to get this in here. Let us know. Bring it here. We're going to help you install it. We'll figure it out. So the next day, we loaded it onto, I don't know if there should be some pictures of the trailer.
Yeah, are those on your page or are they on John's page?
They're definitely on John's page as well. I thought they were on mine. I don't see them.
I'll go to John's.
Maybe on the timeline. Yeah, go to John's. He has them all up there. So we loaded this thing up, drove it over, and so if you guys don't know, the corner that he was murdered, 38th in Chicago, is completely like it's quarantined off. It's blocked off. You cannot drive in there. There's stone barricades, and it's just a sacred space that you can't drive in. So I pulled up with the piece and went and found the people that were running the circle. And of course, yeah, if we can find the picture with it on the trailer.
Yeah, I've seen that one.
So you can imagine this thing like on the back of a trailer riding around. It was pretty powerful. And so we pull up to it, and it was like the sea just parted. Everyone that was there came over to help. They moved the barricades. We drove in. Everyone helped unload the piece. Again, like I said, it was incredibly heavy. We had close to 25, 30 people carrying the piece into its location. There was a couple of bus shelters on the corner. And I originally wanted to install it on one of the bus shelters. And then one of the people there that was running the circle said, let's do it in the one across the street because it's 5 yards away from where he was murdered. And so we drilled it right into the bus shelter. That shelter has now since become a shrine. You can walk behind the mural and go into the bus shelter. and there's other artwork, there's candles burning. And so there's a lot of talk right now. I'm getting a lot of attention with the piece about how to preserve it. And so I've gotten messages from the Smithsonian, different museums, other museums around the country, different organizations that want to preserve the mural. So I'm sure this is probably going to end up somewhere. I hope it doesn't end up in somebody's collection where only a few people get to see it. Hopefully it ends up being a traveling exhibit with all the other artifacts, all the other artwork that's around. But I do know that my particular piece is becoming sort of the icon or the focal point of that corner, which I'm blessed. You know, I actually really didn't do it for that reason. I just wanted to have an incredibly high impact. You know, I kind of painted it in a ghostly manner.
Yeah.
Black and white, really striking. Again, I did not sign it. So, you know, people quickly found out I was the one that did it. I really like the fact that people trying to, you know, I could see messages being posted on Facebook and Instagram of people trying to figure out who did it. And I love that. So even though I wanted to do it in a guerrilla fashion, it still ended up that way. You know, the people, the community came around, helped install it. Yeah, it's worked out perfect every step of the way.
Yeah.
Now there is a signature on there, but it's actually not my name. It's my graffiti name. And I'll just let it rest with that. So, yeah, people were trying to figure out like who did it, but you know, cat's out of the bag, and
Yeah.
you know.
Well, those things happen sometimes, you know, sort of like the gold star.
Right.
The benevolent, what were you, the benevolent?
The benevolent mystery artist.
Yeah, or vandal,
Yeah.
or I can't remember. I don't remember. Yeah, but yeah, if you don't know what we're talking about,
That's what it was.
yeah,
Benevolent mystery vandal.
yeah, you can Google. What should we say? Google First Avenue Gold Star. People, they can go on another little hunt.
Gold Star. I guess that one of the main articles that came out was the man who made it gold. So, you know, I was responsible for that. That went secret for about 4 months.
That did stay secret for a while, but you know, all good things came out too. But
yeah, that was cool. That went secret for 4 months, and it finally surfaced.
yeah.
I was the one. 24 karat gold leaf. I gold leaf the star. Yeah.
For Prince at First Avenue.
Yeah, for Prince, right? Yeah, we didn't mention that, but you know, Minneapolis, man. You know, Minneapolis has definitely been in the public eye, man. We definitely have a name finally. Hopefully people will stop calling us Mindianapolis and pronouncing the name wrong. So Minneapolis, you know, we're definitely on the map now, so to speak.
It's a great city. I fell in love with it immediately the first time I visited, to consider going to school there, and I fell in love with it, and I made the best friends of my life, you know, in school there, and people that are, you know, many of you are still there, but some of us had come in for school, and then people went other places, and so now they're all over the place. But there's something about the city, I think, that I don't know. It just there's a love there and a connection there that I felt immediately, and I think is still there. Although my brother, when I said I was going to school there, he said, "Are you just going there because Prince lives there?" He totally thought that's why I decided to live in it. Which, you know, I can't say it. It certainly wasn't, you know, a negative thing, but that's not why I chose to move there. But a lot of great things happening in Minneapolis.
You know, I'd also like to say, like, using George Floyd's face.
Yeah.
So I painted 2 of these. Originally, I wanted to do 3, but it ended up being 2. And one of them is here, South Minneapolis, 38th in Chicago, and the other one's over north. The place that I actually finished my growing up. I do consider myself a North Sider, North Minneapolis resident. I currently live there now. And the second piece is there. It's on Newton or Glenwood and Newton, one of the neighborhoods that I actually lived in as well. So the second piece is there. The second one is a little different. It's a little cleaner. Again, it was the second time that I painted it, so I kind of knew this was sort of, the first one was like the warm up. So the second one I painted a lot faster. I didn't do the dripping technique that is really common in my work. And before I installed them, I thought the second one was a better executed painting. Again, it's cleaner, but then as time has gone on, the first one is by far the better painting with the drips. It has an element of struggle and hurt and sadness. And then there were times that I wept when I was painting this. I was really angry when I was doing this. So all of that spirit and that energy went into this first painting. The second one was a little cleaner. It was more of a copy, I would say. It was a copy of the first one. Still has all the energy. It still has the life there, but I don't think that the spirit went into the second one as the first one. And, you know, there was some pushback about this man, George, and his life. And, you know, people tried to vilify him as what happens in almost all the victims, completely BS. You know, it doesn't matter how he lived his life. It was, again, tragically at the hands of police brutality. Whether or not, you know, he was an upstanding citizen or he was a jerk in life, that didn't matter. But I bring that up because I'm not highlighting his name, George Floyd. He deserves justice. His family deserves justice, absolutely. But I'm using his face as the icon of the revolution. This was like the start of it. His face is a very strong African-American man. It represents all of African-American people in this country. And so it just became the icon. And that's the name of what I call this, icon of the revolution. And so I'm using this face to symbolize that. Of course, it's George Floyd, but I'm not putting the name on blast. I'm not highlighting that. So I really wanted to drive that home. You know, his features are just, you know, typical Black American. You know, they're beautiful, and especially aesthetically, when you're creating art, these features just work. And there's so much there. There's so much of a story there, and I try to capture that. I try to capture that with a darker image, just to highlight the hurt, the struggle, the pain, and the years that we've gone through. So that's really what that piece is describing. That's what I was trying to capture.
Well, I think you know, so many of your choices, the decision to make it monochromatic, just a black and white image, I think makes it very much iconographic and like a symbol. I mean, you did that, and I think that choice, and it increases, you know, sort of the sad drama of the situation, and what to me sort of looks like, I mean, it looks like tread marks. It looks like tire marks on the side of his, you know, of the image. You know, and it's really striking and beautiful and sad. And I think it, you know, I think it is, people are going to look at it for a long time and remember what happened, and not just to him, but hopefully to, you know, as you said, I mean, it's like countless numbers of people killed by police, and men and women. And so I hope that I'm hopeful that this is the beginning of something really different. It feels different to me this time, and here in Kentucky, and certainly we've seen, I mean, I've seen the, you know, the images on the news and friends there that have gone to the site. I really appreciated that, the real pictures from the site, and not just the news media, but from people, you know, and their comments about how sacred the space is. And is it just community members that are kind of holding that space? Is that, and And that's
Community members, they got their own security. If you go in at night, they kind of check you. They walk up to you to make sure, like, they kind of what is your demeanor entering the space, making sure you're not going to cause trouble. It is definitely a peaceful space, no question about that.
yeah.
If you're in Minneapolis, that is definitely somewhere you have to go visit. There's nothing like it. It's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Talking about police brutality, I think another reason that really hit me on a very personal note is that I've been a victim of that myself on 3 particular occasions. I've been profiled dozens of times. I've been pulled over a lot. Again, I live in the hood. I live in North Minneapolis, and so it's a normal occurrence. The profiling.
And I lived there for 10 years, and I was never pulled over, not one time, ever.
Yeah,
a
few times a year I get pulled over. But three of those particular occasions were rough. They were rough and brutal. I pretty much got beat up while in handcuffs, car searched. These are for minor traffic offenses. The very first one, I was a 17-year-old. I just recently acquired my driver's license, and I failed to signal when I turned, and I got pulled over, pulled out of the car, handcuffed, legs kicked, slapped in the head, elbow in my back, pushed over the hood of my car searched, frisked aggressively, and then let go with "Have a nice day." No ticket, no citation, no nothing.
Yeah.
I had to clean my car up, and of course I was traumatized after that. I didn't really understand, like, what was that. Had to talk to my dad about it, and some other people, and then a handful of years later, with my dad, we were my first year of college.
Yeah, I think you told me about this one.
Sitting in front of my house, my mother's house, the house that I pretty much grew up in. My dad came over to visit. We're sitting in the car, and I'm telling him about my first year of college. One of the neighbors called 2 black guys sitting in a car. The whole Karen syndrome that we're seeing. White folks calling cops on black people. So they show up. They hit my car. They sort of like diagonally parked in this road while they pinned the car in with their bumper. Pulled us out of the car at gunpoint. Reaching out with the opposite hand to undo the, like a what do they call that? A federal stop. It was crazy. So we both get out, of course, handcuffed. They're asking us what we're doing, why we're sitting in the car. Immediately I'm like, this is my house. I live here. This is my dad. I'm back from college. I'm catching up with him. ID comes out. They're reading the ID. The address matches the ID, and it continues. They search the car. I kind of, in a way, I started to lip off a little bit, and my dad told me to be quiet, be silent, because I'm gonna end up escalating the situation. So he just said, keep my eyes on me and just relax your body and just go with it. Because we were facing each other across the hood of my car, leaned over the the hood. And then, again, let go with have a nice day. And as I'm walking back to my house, my neighbor comes out and he goes, "Oh, I didn't know that was you."
Right.
So that was a whole nother argument that ensued after that. But, and then it happened another couple of years after that. I don't want to go into the explanation. Same thing, just roughed up really badly. But that third one, I went in to go complain. I went to the precinct to complain. And that was just met with eyes rolling, the papers thrown at me across the desk. Fill this out. We'll get back to you.
Yeah.
I never heard anything. from that complaint that I tried to lodge. You know, so been there, done that. And every time I was incredibly respectful. I mean, the second time I kind of lipped off a little bit, but quickly, very respectful, very compliant, ID out right away. I wasn't trying to pull any rights and, you know, this and that. And it just continued, man. It doesn't matter. They profile you, they beat you up, especially if you live in the neighborhood that I live in. So I've got personal experiences with that. Yeah, so changing the subject a little bit, this piece that you just pulled up, this is on the corner of Lake and Lindale, one of the corners of the uprising, you know, like a week after the murder, when the revolution started and our city was burning. This is one of those corners, all boarded up. And so I wanted to do something that talked about us coming together and understanding each other. And these are stencils from students that I've had, murals that I've painted. And so I just put them all together, you know, a big mix of people smiling, in the words "we" in the middle. So yeah, this is one of those pieces I hope that is saved. I call this a collaboration of 3 individuals. The first one being the carpenters that put the boards up. They kind of put them up kind of haphazardly, quickly, 2x4s in area, you know, kind of sloppy in a way. And then you have a protester that kind of tagged "Humanity wins, police brutality loses, changes here." And then there's me as a seasoned artist that went on top of that. So I do have permission from the building owners and the association of the neighborhood to save this piece. So I'm going to save the entire thing, and hopefully I'll be able to exhibit it somewhere once it comes down. So this one is really powerful also.
Yeah. Well, and it reminded me of some of the work. I'm on your Sprayfinger page now. Some of the work that you're doing with the kids in the camps. You want to talk about that a little bit? With the stenciling and
yeah. So Sprayfinger.
Yeah.
The Sprayfinger, you know, I'm wearing the shirt here. Sprayfinger is my education group, my program. I've been at it for since I was awarded a Bush grant here in Minnesota, a very prestigious fellowship in 2012. That lasted for 2 years. And during that fellowship, I designed a curriculum that uses the term openly graffiti as an educational curriculum. And so I designed a curriculum to transform the artistic merits of graffiti into a fine art. And how do you teach that, merging design elements and design principles with the language of street art and creative lettering, letter structure, you know, the use of spray paint as an artistic tool. And so one of the most popular things is the face stencil, because you cut a stencil, it's a likeness of the student. We take a photograph, we make the photograph into a black and white image, then that's projected, and then you trace out the images, and then you draw them out in a stencil format so that the integrity of the paper stays together, so that you have a stencil. And then, you know, it's up to the artist to figure out how they're going to paint that. This particular project, if you go back, is an elementary school mural painted on polytab. It's a material like wallpaper that it's applied later. So this is in my studio, which I'm in my studio now. These are my cans in the back. That particular wall is right here to my left, but the mural is not quite finished. I had to take it down because my camp started, but we're just about finished. But these are the students that took the, what was it? It was a 3-month mural process where they learned a little bit of graffiti lettering. They learned how to spray paint a little bit. Each one of them got to make a face stencil. But Sprayfinger, I've been all over the country teaching this beautiful art form of creative lettering. Mural, this is Franklin Middle School, North Minneapolis Middle School. I just completed this mural right before COVID hit. I think January, February was the completion of this. I had, I think, 9 7th graders. This is Jemison, first African-American female astronaut. So they are highlighting her in this particular piece. Hopefully I'll do 2 other murals. There's a few other astronauts that they want to highlight here at Franklin, but that's what this mural is.
Cool.
So my program, just, it's not just only for youth, but it's all the way, it's for adults and older adults as well. But it's really about highlighting graffiti as an art form. And then getting people to understand that writing your name, depending on how you write your name, actually transcends. There's more messages to it by the color choices, the style. I mean, you can see the pride in, like, when the kids paint their names and they get to be recognized and celebrated for who they are. It gives them the chance to create a name for themselves and how they want to be represented to the world. And they design their letters in the particular way that they want, learning spray paint and figuring out. So this is Jane, 3 different photographs of her. She's one of my star students. She's been with me for about 4 years. She's really climbing the ladder. She actually would love to be an intern in the program. This is Jane again doing her face stencil. In a couple years, she'll be, I think 18, 19, and then I'll probably hire her back on as a teaching artist assistant. I actually have 3 different students that are kind of in that same realm where they're getting to be like 4 or 5 year students of mine. This is a letter exercising where we do a grid and we learn letter structure, how letters actually look and how you form them. And then you take the shapes of the letters and you artistically manipulate those. And that's where you get that graffiti aesthetic, where you start adding arrows and hearts and drips and cracks and color. But it first starts here, learning how to draw a simple letter, which is actually a lot more challenging than most people think until they get into it. So those are some of the elements of my program, and it's the one thing that I'm trying to promote the most. It's the most satisfying for me, more than me being an individual artist, is being able to share that. It has so much more impact. It's so much more of a spiritual uplifting for me in my life and my career. And it's the thing that I'm really trying to promote more than anything is Sprayfinger.
Well, I know the kids here, I mean, there was in Kentucky, there was nothing, I don't know of anybody else doing a graffiti camp. And so that we got to offer that last year, a week-long camp. We did sort of a day camp for a group of kids at the King Center. And then we did the week-long camp, because you were here for a couple weeks, I think, this most recent time. We did the full week camp, and watching the kids develop those skills, even just in that short amount of time, was really exciting. And you could see the sense of pride, on their face, which was a lot of fun. And we had people emailing us, this spring, kind of summer. We'd already even had to close the park, but people were like, hey, are you going to do that camp again? So hopefully we can do it again, maybe next year. Things get a little bit less, they calm down a little bit COVID wise. Hopefully we can get back to doing some traveling and bring you back. We'd love to have you back. But
Can you see my screen?
No, but if I stop sharing, I can stop sharing and then we can show yours.
Yeah, I'd like to share a handful of photos that I have up.
Yep. Okay. I see it now.
See it now? Okay. Just some really powerful images that I've had. This was actually a class that I did in the Bronx, New York. It was my first class in the Bronx. I was completely nervous. Who am I, a kid from Minnesota, coming to the Bronx to teach them graffiti? This is where it started. And I was met with praise in an incredible way. Not only that, but I'm actually going back. We're writing grants. They were very impressed with how it happened, and it was just incredible. And this particular artist here, Zot is his graffiti name. He's very, he reminded me of Basquiat a lot, just the way he works, kind of messy, but also really controlled. This is his actual stencil. And I had him hold it up because I thought this by itself was the work of art and not the copy that it made. So I had him hold it up while I took this picture. But of course he made a lot more stencils. And so this thing this doesn't exist really, but this is just a really powerful image here. So that was an adult class that I had. This is my mother. She took one of my courses, the older adult class that I have. And so again, being able to offer it to everybody, especially the baby boomers. This age group was the age group that I fought with in the 80s and early 90s to try to get this art form looked at as an art form.
Yeah.
And so now they're obviously they're softening, and you know a lot of these folks, I got a few more, have taken the class, and they're finding this joy that they're actually obviously being able to see the artisticness of it and being able to do it themselves. His name is actually Art. So
that's
yeah,
my dad's name.
Right, Artie. Exactly.
It's not my dad, but yeah, good name. Well, you
Yeah.
know, Peyton, I think one of the things that this really speaks to, kind of circling back to that comment in the beginning about it, this, you know, graffiti is so accessible. And I think it, like a lot of art forms, it has the ability to sort of cross those generational lines and race lines, and, you know, through these classes that you're doing, that really just allows people to see it from a different perspective. And when you can participate in it, it's not so bad, and it's not so, you know, well, if you're doing it, then maybe it's not all, you know, thugs and, you know, vandalism. People can start to appreciate it. And I think that's one of the things that art can do, is just help people see the world through a different lens. And I think we sure need a lot more of that. So I think this is a good thing that you're doing. Look at Dace there.
Yeah, that was my boy. Yeah, I've been grooming my son since he was a toddler, and you know, he's got some skills of his own. I mean, I'll put him back up here again. You know, this was all him. It's a mix between, he actually stenciled these letters out. He cut a big giant stencil out of brown paper, and then he likes to do these stripes. He's really he's actually did some artist studies of who's the artist that famous artist, it's slipping my mind. He kind of looks like a graffiti writer. I can't believe I'm forgetting who it is. But one of the graffiti writers that he likes, I'll think of it later in a bit. One of the graffiti writers he likes is Revoke. LA artist. He does these lines in his work, and so he kind of had a lot of influence from Revoke. Frank Stella.
Oh, yeah.
So he's done some artist studies of that. So he likes his geometric shapes, and you know, he's kind of a math and science kid also. So he was able to figure how to add those into his lettering. Yeah, I'm really proud of him, of course. My daughter too. Do I have any things of hers up here? No. Yeah. Actually, here's a picture of her. I don't want to put these guys on blast too much, but this is her just having fun in my studio. So, yeah.
So do you want to shift gears a little bit and talk about Juneteenth, maybe? You know, our whole from the sculpture park, we had originally planned to do this huge community-wide event with another organization in town called Focus on Race Relations, and Heather Hart, who was in residence a little bit last year, was going to be here. We were going to finish her piece and have community conversations. She's the co-founder of a project called the Black Lunch Table, and we were going to do some of that work here. And, you know, we had this huge big thing planned. And then, of course, you know, the pandemic. And so we decided, well, we'll just put everything on hold, you know, until next year. And then everything else happened. And a couple weeks ago, Ed Poe, who's the founder of Focus on Race Relations, and we were leaving a press conference, and we just, you know, I said, Ed, we should still do something. I don't know what, but we should do something. I know we can't really get together and have this big community event, but so we decided to do a virtual event. And for the sculpture park, we wanted to feature Black artists and African American artists whom we've worked with in the past, and really kind of hold their work up, and as a way to support them, and, you know, to strengthen Black voices and artwork and creativity. So that's what we're doing here as our way to celebrate Juneteenth this year, in lieu of a big community event with artists and musicians. And so I want to thank you for participating in it and being one of the artists that, you know, that worked with us and that we could feature. But I just wanted to offer you an opportunity too, if you wanted to talk about Juneteenth a little bit, and, you know, if that's been part of your life, and how so, and, you know, I mean,
Absolutely.
I'm sure we
So
have different experiences of that, for sure.
Yeah, Juneteenth is our celebration of like the Emancipation Proclamation, and the celebration that slavery ended. And it had to happen because there was so many of Black Americans that did not know that slavery was ended, and so that had to spread throughout the country to get that message across. And growing up, I've always celebrated Juneteenth, but I remember as a child, it was always kind of secret. It was like this little picnic. Nobody really knew about it. You know, people would talk about it. But it wasn't this big thing. And when I got into high school, maybe more like college in the 90s, late 80s, early 90s, the Urban League started to do a little bit more bigger festivals based on Juneteenth. You know, summer, obviously June, in the summer, renting out different parks, and then celebrating that with booths and festivals, you know, just kind of a get together barbecue kind of thing. Excuse me. And so it just continued to grow, and yeah, it was always just sort of something we didn't, I mean, for me, I would have to say it wasn't something that we like would celebrate in a huge way, like, you know, this is the marker that slavery has ended kind of thing. It was just sort of another opportunity to go barbecue, you know, go buy a t-shirt somewhere. It's a festival down the way. Juneteenth is going on, you know, and then 4th of July is going to happen. And then, whiz bang days, and then, and then this, and then that, and then that. So that's kind of just really what it was. And I think in recent times, it all of a sudden now is a lot more important. And it's weird for me because I'm starting to hear from the white community, which I will, have to say that I'm half white. I've grown up in both communities. I've grown up in affluent communities. I've grown up in rural communities, and I've grown up in the hood. I've lived in both worlds simultaneously, depending on whether I lived with my mother or when I lived with my dad. So I grew up in both of those communities. The white community has no clue what Juneteenth is. They've never even heard of it. They don't even know what the word is and any of that. And it's up until just recently, it's like we kind of don't really talk about it because it's, for one, most of the white community, they just don't want to hear about it. You get that, oh, you're playing a race card thing. What are you looking for, a handout, kind of attitude. So it's just not something we would openly talk about. But now it's starting to be, people are discovering it and they're like, wow, I didn't even know that was a thing. So it's kind of weird for me to hear about that. But, like I said, I've lived in both communities, and I get to juggle that. I get to see both sides of it. I get to see both of the ugly sides. I get to see both of the beautiful sides. You know, it's one of the products of being biracial and living in both communities. So, but I do know that you know, the white community definitely has the ignorance about what Juneteenth is and why it's celebrated and why it's important. But I think now more and more people are open to it. They want to celebrate it, and they're discovering it, and they're celebrating. You was one of them. Here we're doing this format,
Yeah.
and you're allowing this to happen, and you're highlighting artists of color during this particular time. So
Yeah.
thank you for being open about that and going out and learning about it.
Yeah. Well, I think definitely, I mean, obviously it wasn't something that we celebrated at home, or I certainly didn't learn about it in school. And you and I were talking about this earlier, that I think unless you had, unless you were Black, or maybe you had a close friend or family member or something, that we didn't learn about it in any other way. And so I don't even remember exactly when I became aware of it, but I'm sort of assuming it was within the last 10 years. I don't know. But even then it was sort of like, oh, that's a Black holiday.
Yeah.
Really, you know, but I think especially now people are more willing to listen, and to talk about it, and to share feelings more openly about it. And it seems to me that it's something that we should all be really proud of. You know, it's like, it's a moment, like, we've made these really bad decisions, you know, as a nation, and then we made a good one. Like, you know, and then we should all embrace that. To me, it seems like it's something that certainly, as you said, that it was sort of something you did kind of in secret. But I think I'm hopeful now that, for all kinds of things, but it seems like people are talking more and listening more, and I hope that's the start of something, some real change that we can see, you know, in our lifetimes. I feel hopeful that we'll see some change happen, you know.
I think with the internet and the openness, and people actually get to see what we've been talking about forever.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can go in history and you can see recordings of celebrities, and you know, we're talking about this forever. This
Yeah.
is nothing new for us, absolutely. But because of this format, people are finally beginning to see it, and yeah, it's now finally talked about. And I think this is kind of the beginning of things changing. Hopefully it does feel different. It feels like there's things that are happening. um you know, I'm kind of like, I'm like, all right, when time goes by, it will just be back to normal. The powers that be are still where they are. They, you know, this, you know, so I'm kind of at that point where, like, we'll see. Let's see if it'll happen.
Yeah.
Because my community, right, half of my community, you know, again, uh, we can't change it. We've been protesting, we've been silent protesting, we've been rioting, we've done it all. We've been begging, pleading, trying to open it up, and it's honestly not our issue. It's not our issue. Other communities need to recognize it as their issue, a white issue,
Yeah.
and that's when it can actually really change. Once you've adopted it as your problem and you see it that way, that's when it can finally change.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's kind of where it's at. You know, a lot of people don't want to hear that, but that is the truth, and that's the reality of it.
Yeah. But I think there are a lot of people who are hearing it. And I
Yeah.
think the internet too, that we can see, you know, it's a huge thing, and it's overwhelming. And if you do care about it and you are listening, you know, for the last forever. I mean, I know for me it was like, well, what can I do on like this global scale? Well, I can't do anything on a global scale. And so I thought, well, what I can do is, in my life, I can do these things. And I think that's what a lot of us felt like was enough, or like was all we could do. But now seeing the movement, and so many more people saying, no, I think this too. It's like you start to feel hopeful that there are more of us who feel this way. And if we do all stand up and speak out and vote and donate if we can, you know, to organizations that have been around forever doing this work, you know, the NAACP and the National Black Caucus and groups like that that are, and of course, Black Lives Matter. But to me, it feels like there is a momentum that feels like possible. Whereas before it just felt like, what the hell can I do? I mean, I'm like one person, you know, but I think we're seeing that we are way more than one person, and that we can move together and organize in a way through the internet that, you know, even 10 years ago wasn't really possible like it is now. And so I hope that I'm hopeful. I just, you know, I am kind of a forever optimist too, but I am really hopeful about this. And I know I've made, you know, it's made me more aware. I've also seen really ugly, negative, unbelievably ignorant, racist stuff all over the internet lately that I had never seen before. And I'm like, holy, I have to do more. Like when you see how ugly it is, then you really are motivated to even do more than you thought you were already doing. So I'm, you know, trying to do that too, but I'm excited about, you know, everything that you're doing and all the work you're doing and our friendship. And I'm excited to have you back here, you know, whenever we can do that again and continue to make good work together.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I love road trips. I'd love to take my kids are missing it. They're going crazy being all sheltered at home, and they want to get out on the road. And yeah, I want to paint my sculpture again. I want to get out there.
Well, we'll definitely have you back. You know, ever since we made it, we were like, we should do this every year. So
yeah, Rock the Henge Festival every year. That would be so cool.
Yeah, we got to make it happen. Well, I think we've probably, you know, you and I could talk all night long.
I know.
We could totally do that. But do you want to share like website or anything like that for Sprayfinger or anything else you're doing where people want to see more stuff?
Yep. Anybody wants to you know, see what I'm up to, sprayfinger.com. Sprayfinger, just as it sounds, one word, Sprayfinger, on Instagram and Facebook as well. So
great. And we'll put all your handles in the description so people will have links and stuff too. So yeah. Well, thank you, Peyton. Is there anything else we should cover before we say goodnight?
I don't think so. I think we covered a whole lot. I think we're good.
I know. Well, it's good to catch up with you, and I'm glad you guys are safe and, you know, doing good things. And I can't wait to see you soon in person. And hopefully, you know, we could even hug. That'd be nice.
Yeah.
I look forward to those days.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too.
All right. Well, thank you. And I'm going to end this video. And if you guys want more information, you can see Peyton's work on the Josephine Sculpture Park website too. So we'll put that up too. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
I'm not stopping the recording. I don't know how to stop.